Hey everybody, welcome back to the Down the Rabbit Hole podcast. I'm your host, Rob Wall, and today I have my friend Adam with me.
Hello.
I'm pretty excited about today's topic. We are going to do logos, and it's a concept that I've heard thrown around a lot, but it took me a long time to actually learn what it is. So we're gonna start off. Adam here is going to read a little definition of what logos actually is.
All right. So logos is a Greek word, and it's from like Herodotus' time, Plato's time, and it's a term in Western philosophy, psychology, rhetoric, and religion. And it's derived from the Greek word variously meaning ground, plea, opinion, expectation, word, speech, account, reason, proportion, and discourse. It says logos became a technical term in Western philosophy beginning with Herodotus in 535 to 475 BC. And he used it for the term for a principle of order and knowledge. And ancient Greek philosophers used the term also in different ways.
Okay. So yeah, like in my understanding of it, it's almost like synonymous with perspective. You know, I know that like the Christian take on it is like the Word of God.
Yeah.
You know, but you know it's pretty much open for interpretation because like as the definition you just read, I mean, it covers a lot of stuff. You know.
Yeah. It seems like Judaism, Christianity, Greek. It's all. Everyone's got their own like perspective of what logos is, but I mean, it seems like it's all boils down to the same thing, which is what you said, like perspective or meaning or reason. When I read the Christian part, it was saying like the Word of God, but when it's talking about it, it's using it as a verb, which is interesting.
Yeah. I one of the things that I've been like reading about a lot recently, and whenever you get into philosophy, this is basically a philosophical term, most philosophers really try to dissect like, the human take on the world. You know what I mean? Like in other words, they believe that, everybody perceives the world differently, and so like nothing we know is actually real, and so like they're most of them, at least their goal is to try to like cut through that and figure out what essentially is the meaning behind everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it seems like everyone's got different perspectives on reality, and people are creating their own realities, and I think there's definitely like foundational truths to the universe.
Yes. And like depending on who you're reading, and also in different eras, obviously there was like popular beliefs and stuff, but it's like that seems to me like what every philosopher seems to try to do is to like cut through the the interpretive mechanism that we use to view the world and figure out what is the fundamental drive that drives humanity, basically. And some of the famous people that have put forth these kind of theories, I guess you could say. We've had like men like Freud, right, who basically boiled it down to like a sexual motive, and then you have men more like Immanuel Kant, or like more like religious minded people that think that the conscious is proof that there's like a fundamental morality that drives man. Which I can kind of see to a certain extent. And then there's the will to power, which was popular with like Alfred Adler or Friedrich Nietzsche, both of whom are big on that aspect of it. But like as far as like your personal idea of what the fundamental drive is, like where are you with that?
So when I think of logos, I think of meaning, and after I read I don't know how to pronounce the name, Frank, A Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, Viktor Frankl.
Yeah. He after I read that, and I kind of even got more of a psychological understanding of logos, besides it having a spiritual aspect of it, is the meaning to life. What is your meaning to go forward? And, for me with like addiction, I think that in the past when I've tried to, get sober or, just live life, that I was lacking a meaning, I was lacking a reason, and it made everything harder. It made it harder to go through the steps. It made it harder to just live life. And so that's something I've explored this time around. And I think that I've, have been going towards mine. I think that it's ever going to expand, and it's ever going to, get more and more. I don't think it's just something like, oh, this is my meaning for life. But like right now I do have a meaning and a reason, and it's given me a strength or like a power that I've never experienced before.
I love that book, and I love the ideas of logotherapy and stuff like that, especially when it comes to addiction. The existential vacuum that he talks about is, like, to me, like, I mean, you couldn't describe what AA says about it, alcoholism and addiction, better,
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I've been reading a lot of Nietzsche recently, and what he is basically does is he kind of just picks everything apart, and says, like, look, this is all just an illusion that we've created to live in because we're weak, and
It didn't end well for him.
No, it didn't. And it didn't end well for anybody that took his philosophy super seriously, because that philosophy lived out was a lot of what led to the horrors of World War II, but he is right to an extent. You know what I mean?
Smart,
there is no, like, true universal truth, I guess you could call it. And if there is, that, as a human being, we just can't really hope to understand that.
Yeah, we'll never be able to fully grasp, what's out there.
Yeah, but it's like, just because that's the case doesn't necessarily mean that it should be written off. You know what I mean? Because everybody has their own personal truth. So, like, I think that lines up very well with what Frankl is writing about, where, like, the whole drive in life is to find meaning. Because it's like, if that's really all there is, right, is meaning that's personal to you, then, like, that's what we got to work with, right? I don't think that the will to power, let's say, I think that, like, all those men that I talked about earlier, with all their different ideas of what drives us, I think every single one of them are right. You know what I mean? It's not that, like, any of them are, like, explicitly wrong, because it's like, these are all, it would be silly to say that we only have one drive. You know what I mean? So we, all of our drives are there, but it's like, at the core of it all, like, because of that interpretive structure, it is meaning, that we're looking for, and then all those other ones, I would say, would just be an outlet for how we search for it. You know what I mean?
And when I was reading about how he did logotherapy with people, he was helping people to try to find a meaning, and it's like a big breakdown, like logotherapy. It's not just like, what's your meaning in life? Okay, good, you're cured, you have a meaning. Now there's like work to do with it, and because of him going through the Holocaust and noticing how the people that didn't really have any meaning, didn't have anything that they were looking forward to, if they got out, they died because they had no drive to go forward, no meaning. They had no meaning. And he noticed that the people that did have meaning, that did hold on, they were able to get through it. I think one of the best examples I saw in the book was about how he said someone came up to him, and the guy was thinking about giving up, and he was like, well, what if it was you that died, and your wife had to live with it? And he was like, oh, that would have been horrible. And he was like, okay, well, good. Well, it was, you have to live out for her, just like you want her to live. So that was his meaning, to live for your wife dying. And he got up and left the office, and he noticed how it worked, how it helped the man to keep going forward.
He was able to find meaning in his suffering. Because that's another thing that it seems to be like, that is universal, is suffering. Like, nobody can go through life without experiencing some negative stuff. And that's not the only way, that you can find meaning, because you can find meaning in positive ways too, like through love and other things like that. But I would say that whatever it is that whatever outlet you're using to attempt to find meaning, it has to be like something deep, you know,
Yeah,
like
definitely.
like surface level stuff doesn't cut it, because it's like, if you know, like I could find meaning in a hobby,
Yeah.
for example, you know, but it's not deep enough to like keep me grounded when the suffering happens,
Yeah.
when the shit hits the fan, you know what I mean?
The big book says something about that too. It says like, I think when you're doing your fourth step, maybe it's like this has to be, I don't know. I guess they're saying like whatever you're doing with all this stuff, it has to be deep, it has to be impactful, it has to be,
yes.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, the message which can capture these people must have depth
And weight.
something
Yeah, that
along
was
those
it.
lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and so one of the things that I've been making a study of recently is kind of how like one of the big problems of modern man is that a lot of the outlets to meaning, like a lot of the paths that man used to take are gone now.
Yeah, now it's cars or you know, a girl or something external,
something earthly.
Something that not, you know. There's a lot of stuff that that I care about. That's, you know, I care about my daughter. I care about, you know, my family. But you know, so I have to find like a meaning or a reason, like deep down, like a reason for life, or a reason, a fundamental reason of why I should go forward. And you know, like for me, it's a part of like leaving something good on this earth. Like I want to do something. I want to help somebody else. You know, I'd say that like if I saved one life, it would make my existence meaningful. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is like, I think one of the biggest blessings of being in recovery is you have that path that's been kind of carved out that leads you to that meaning through that altruistic, you know, process of sponsoring somebody, you know, getting them sober. But like for the average, you know, the average Joe, you know, it's like you don't really have anything laid out like that. Over the years, I think religion has sort of become watered down a bit, and with science kind of taking precedence over everything, you know, it's just we're left without an outlet, right? And that's why like so many people dream about fame or becoming rich and stuff like that, because it's like that. To them, that's meaning. That's the materialistic idea of what meaning in life is, you know. But the problem with that is like, you know, short of being like super talented or like super successful, you know, it's like you're kind of just lost, you know. And you know, I think personally that is why you have so many people that are becoming nihilistic. You know, they've lost sight of that meaning, you know, and if you can't find meaning in your life, then the next best thing then would be to just forget about everything, you know, to like lose yourself in something, you know, and you know, today's day and age is it's alcohol, drugs, and materialistic things, you know what I mean? And so we're drinking and drugging ourselves into like a stupor, so we're not aware of the fact that our life is meaningless. Yeah, you know,
society's taking a toll on people. You know, if I think about how things might have been like, you know, 500 years ago or whatever, people out in the woods the basic daily living, you know what I mean? It's simple. It's not like with all the, you know, commercials, everything that we got now, like it really like makes, you know, it's hard on people, it looks like, you know what I mean? Everyone's so caught up in like in stuff that's, you know, it's hurting them.
Yeah, and so like when you don't have meaning in your life and you are left with just hedonism, basically, right? Just like you're living life in the pursuit of pleasure because that's the only thing that makes life worthwhile. You know, like lived out to the extreme, it's like there you are at addiction and alcoholism, and then even that stops working, you know, and that's when you start to wish for the end. You know, so in my mind, it's a completely dead end path, you know. So I don't know, with all that, I think that finding meaning is of like the utmost important, not only for people like us, but for like everybody. Yeah. You know?
Everyone suffers, you know, everyone's got depression or anxiety, everyone's got their own struggles and everything, and you know, people that are able to find meaning in their lives are able to, you know, rise above and and live a meaningful life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as far as logos goes, you know, I think some of the so obviously you have like the religious aspect of it, you know, and that is like a leftover path, you know, to find that meaning, and then the altruistic, you know, path that we just talked about, like that AA puts forward. I think that's really important too, because the problem with religion is people can fall into the mistaken belief that if they just use religion as an ideology, like just a belief, you know, they think that that'll be enough, you know, to give meaning to their life, and it just doesn't work, right? Because it does. You need to act this stuff out, you know?
Yeah, instead of saying like, oh, you know, I'm a Christian, being a Christian and living the way that, you know, Jesus told, or any other religion, you know what I mean? Like, not necessarily just you in the outside world, but, you know, you and on the inside, you know, your relationship with God, your spirituality. You know?
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about recently, which is kind of out there, is all these instincts that we seem to have, you know, all the instincts that the philosophers argue over, for example. Like, I was wondering, like, how much of that is just sort of like almost like inherited on a genetic level, to like a result of like natural selection, basically, you know, like the fundamental religious drive that a lot of people talk about, which can be, you know, phrased in a few different ways, but we'll just call it that, you know. I was thinking to myself, like, okay, what is this religious drive? Like, obviously there's the drive to find meaning, there's the drive to like find
why are we here?
Why are we here? Why, you know, so there's that. But like the idea of religion is like you are holding something in esteem, right? You're venerating it, you're worshiping it respectfully, you know. And so, you know, I was kind of thinking, like, if God created everything, right, then nature is the aspect of God in which subjugates man, right? Yeah. So in other words, like, all right, if evolution is, you know, in fact, you know, what exactly happened, you know, which is an evolving theory, oddly enough. You know, I would say that the ancient men that worshipped nature, right, had a much better chance to survive.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because it's like, if there's a storm coming and you're just going to go for a walk, your genes aren't going to live on, you know, you're not going to reproduce because you're going to be dead. You know, so that idea of like worshiping something bigger than you, or like venerating it and respecting it, you know, I can see how that could almost like, you know, be drilled into our genetics, you know. And then there's also, I don't know if you've heard about this, but this is super, super interesting. They found out that morality comes from play as children, right? So there was a guy who did experiment with lab rats, you know, and so they would play, they were young, and they would wrestle. And there was one rat that was a little bit bigger than the other one, and so of course it was able to win the wrestling match every time. But what he found time and time again was when the bigger rat would pin the little rat, he was the dominant one, right? After that initial, like, you know, wrestling match, the bigger rat could only play if the littler rat invited him to play. And so if the big rat didn't let the little rat win 30% of the time, the little rat would stop inviting him to play.
That's funny.
So the animals are actually playing fair, which is
that's amazing.
It's mind blowing. You know what I mean? And there's a developmental psychologist, Jean Piaget, who kind of figured that out as far as like his studies in human children. You know, it's like, this is where morality is developed, right? As when we're children and we're learning how to play with each other. That's why, like, if you're neglected as a child and like you are isolated, like those are the most messed up human beings.
Right. Environment, situations, stuff like that. You know, I think that you know, good and evil, right? Like, I don't think that it's necessarily like, oh, someone's evil or someone's good. I think that they are that way because of environment, situations, you know, brain chemistry. You know, I don't think that these people are. You know, I think that everyone's who they are because they're you know, circumstance of their environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all have a capacity for good and evil.
Definitely, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but you know, I can totally see what you're saying. Like, it's like there's a level of maliciousness.
That's all perspective, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I could say, you know, if I go to church, right? Like, this happened to me when I was a kid, right? I used to play like Yu-Gi-Oh cards and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my uncle, who is a like Southern Baptist Christian, said that I was going to hell because Yu-Gi-Oh cards are like witchcraft. So that was his perspective that something was evil. You know what I mean? And that's just a basic, like, you know, kid version of like of a perspective of like good and evil. But you know, like what's you know, good to some, you know, may not be good to someone else, you know?
Well, that's like the big question there, I think. It's like, if everything is interpretation, right, and everybody's meaning is different, like, is there a universal good and a universal bad?
Yeah.
You know? But it's like, it's easy to look at culture and life the way it is today and like pick it apart and say what's wrong with it, you know what I mean? But like, it is developed in its own natural way for a reason. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, and it seems to be the case where anytime we try to fuck around with the formula, it just makes everything worse, at least for a time, until it kind of comes to like a balance. Yeah. You know?
I mean, you know, when it comes to like, I've seen arguments between like atheists or agnostics versus people that believe in higher power, and they talked about intelligent design, how it's something that like can't be overlooked. You know what I mean? Like, with all the you know, how a protein's made with all the enzymes and everything. If one of those blocks fall down, then it all falls down. Yeah. And so, you know, if there's an intelligent design, wouldn't there be an intelligent plan?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally, that's what I want to believe. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what I try to like learn as much as possible to like formulate that theory even better, you know, all the time, because it's like, I think that like, you know, this whole idea of like the materialistic, objective, scientific world, and then the spiritual, metaphysical, where like those two have to come together.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier when you were talking. I was, you know, I heard someone say the other day, they said, when the scientists and the philosophers get to the top of the mountain, they'll see the theologists. You know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting. You know what I mean? I do think that, you know, science and all this stuff that's, you know, mystic or occult in our eyes are just things that haven't been explained yet by science. But you know what I mean? It's all one. It's all the same. We just need to open our minds to stuff that, you know, 100 years ago we wouldn't believe what we have now. Yeah. So, you know, the things that
I've seen that happen with AA. You know what I mean? Because AA was you know, created in the late 30s, and he wrote the big book like in the 40s. You know, and so that was before, you know, science was anywhere near what it is today. And you know, I some of the more recent stuff I've heard, they're like literally discovering that like what AA has been saying for like almost over 80 years now is they're starting to be able to back it up with science.
Yeah, I saw an article about that too.
Yeah, like you know, I think we were talking about it the other day, like the whole idea of like, well, we were talking about it earlier, the existential vacuum, right? When your life is meaningless and you know, and you just feel empty inside, right?
The hopeless that all of us, you know, we all feel inside, you know?
Yeah, once we were at that point, like where we're empty inside, it's nature abhors a vacuum. You know what I mean? Something needs to rush inside to fill it. Yeah. And so if it's not something positive, then it's going to end up being something negative. And so like in the case of, you know, alcoholism and addiction, we try to fill that emptiness with drinking and drugging and partying and the life that comes with it, you know? And so, you know, so the existential vacuum is kind of like, I guess the gasoline, right? Yeah. And then the substance abuse is just the spark that ignites it. Yeah. And then through the process of, you know, dopaminergic reinforcement, like Pavlov's dogs, you know, it's just like you're teaching your brain how to to seek drugs and nothing else. It's like that pathway gets strengthened every time the dopamine is released from the reward at the end. Until it gets to the point where it's like you're seeking drugs on a subconscious level. And it's not like A leads to B. Like that's not how life works. It's like if A is the initial thought that starts the circuitry going, then it's like Z that is like the actual using the drugs. You know what I mean? And so you might be able to predict with like, the first few letters before Z are, consciously, but then what about all this other stuff that doesn't even come to mind? It's like your brain is smarter than you are. So it knows that it needs to just flip this one switch, and the pattern that's going to ensue after flipping that switch leads to drinking and drugging. So if there's like a certain emotional reaction, it just flips that switch, you get that emotion, and then that makes you think this way. Once you start thinking this way, you start to act like this, that leads to this, and next thing you know, you're high. You know what I mean?
We've trained our brains to do it, you know what I mean? I think that like in pain and everything like that, though, is where that hope comes in, you know what I mean? Like through the pain and the hopelessness, that vacuum is where I reached out to something bigger, you know what I mean? I don't think that if I didn't experience all the pain that I went through, that I'd have the beliefs or the hope that I have for life now. If I never went through all that, I wouldn't find meaning for life. I would have just been living like, like everyday people, but still like little empty on side. And, now because I've searched for a meaning, I don't feel at all, really.
And the science goes on to back that all up. It's like once those pathways have been strengthened from thousands and thousands and thousands of times of doing the same thing over and over again, there's no way to get rid of it. You're stuck with it forever. Which is exactly what AA is saying. It's like this doesn't go away. And then what they found was the way to get past that is if 3 neurochemicals are released simultaneously: dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin. Those are the 3. I think they were calling it the holy trifecta. When all 3 of those are released simultaneously, it actually starts to repair
like
that.
Your synapses and stuff like that.
Because your brain has plasticity. So it can actually, the structure of your brain can change. And so basically, what happens is you're building a structure over that beaten path, if you will, and you're creating a whole new path, and that's why we start to see.
That reminds me of a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. What he say? He said, "Don't go along the normal path. Go off and make your own path."
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like that's what leads to recovery. And so. I mean, that's what AA has been saying all this time. Oh, I didn't even tell you the most crazy part. So once he found out that this holy trifecta can create this new path, of course he had to figure out, well, how do you get that holy trifecta to release? Like, what's the best way for that to happen? And so they did a study, and guess what they found? Charity. Charity was what caused the most amount of all 3 to be released simultaneously. I was like, you got to be kidding me.
I like that. That's great.
Hey,
12 steps.
Yes, it's 12 steps. It's like, and this is 80 years ago that they're saying this, and now science is catching up to it. And so there's it's legit, which is, it's crazy. And like, that's just one example. But yeah, like as far as like even deeper spiritual stuff goes, I can only imagine like what is yet to be discovered on that front.
I think that that's something that I've definitely like thought about, is how to retrain my brain. There's stuff today that I do differently and everything, just like exercising, or even the music that I listen to. Like the music that I was listening to when I was out and not doing it in my life is not the music that I listen to anymore, because my brain is trained to, when I'm listening to this is this is what I need to do, or it makes my heart race, or it makes me feel the way that I felt then. So I've changed everything, trying to change those my brain activity, and how it goes to that kind of thinking whenever I'm listening to that.
I'm big on tricking myself a little bit in the beginning to like jumpstart change, because I feel like change, like legitimate change, is like one of the hardest things that anybody can achieve.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, like when I actually changed as a result of 12 steps, that opened my mind to like a lot of other things.
Yeah.
You know, because I kind of just, I guess I saw the world as pretty static and black and white. Like people were the way they were, and that's how it always was going to be, you know, until like I actually changed on a fundamental level, you know. But like I always try to like trick my brain, and like I'll get like a haircut and like shave completely. Like I'll just like change the way I look to like help myself feel that change that's inside.
Sure.
Like the outside is matching the inside. Like my girlfriend had relapsed at one point, and she was in treatment, and when she was gonna get out of treatment, I knew she was gonna come back to our place, and it was gonna be the same place that she was using it, and that was gonna be a difficult thing to overcome. So I rearranged the furniture. I went out and bought new artwork and put it on the walls, and got new furniture and stuff. Like I made the place different. You know what I mean? Even though it was the same place, it looked different.
That's cool.
Yeah. And it's funny because now in hindsight, you know, she looks back on that. She said that really made a difference. That helped. You know. Yeah. Because it's hard enough to change as it is. Yeah. You know. So if you have like, if your surroundings are kind of like pulling you backwards, it's, you know, you're never gonna do it. Yeah. You know,
the things that, you know, I work on changing now, like, you know, I don't have drugs and alcohol to, you know, destroy my life anymore. So I'm having to learn how to, you know, get rid of some of these character defects, you know, making sure that they don't destroy my life in any way, just like drugs or alcohol did. You know, train and learn behaviors that I did for years. You know, I'm not, you know, trying to do anymore. You know, like I used to just not really want to like talk or, you know, communicate with people because I didn't want them to know what was going on with me. So, you know, just like seeing someone smiling, having a conversation, it's something that, you know, I have to learn how to do again. You know.
Yeah, and just like with the meaning too, like, you know, it's so funny how when I came in, you know, my life had no meaning, and I was so beat up and miserable, but and like the people around me, like in recovery, were trying to like offer me this meaning, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it, you know, because the way I had lived my life for so long, it's like, if there is meaning, then I've seriously made a mistake. Yeah. You know, and that's not easy. That's not an easy pill to swallow, to think like, oh man, I wasted a lot of time, you know? Yeah. And like what I do matters. If that's the case, like I really fucked up. Because it's one thing to like do shitty stuff when you're like, you know, think nothing matters. It's like life sucks and then you die. You know, it's like that gives you basically free range to act however you want. But it's like, if there's a God, right, and what you do matters and nothing is meaningless, then it's like, well,
you take a look at everything you're doing.
You got to take a hard look at yourself. There's and that's like, in We Agnostics they talk about that, about how they try to put Galileo to death for his astronomical heresies, right? Yeah. Because he was the one who said that the Earth wasn't the center of the solar system, the sun was, you know. And so like the equivalent is like, if you were selling maps of the solar system, you know, and all your maps had Earth at the center, and then this guy comes and says, oh no, those are all wrong, it's the fucking sun at the center, like of course you're gonna be like, no, this guy's crazy. Yeah. You know, because then everything you have is wrong. It's the same in AA. It's like you come into AA and you're the center. Yeah. You're the center of the universe, and then they say, no, God's the center of the universe. Yeah. So of course you're going to lash out at them, because everything you learned, everything you know, everything you've done, everything you said has been under the assumption that you are the center. Yeah. You know? And so if you're not the center and God's the center, that means you have to relearn everything. Yeah. Well, really, you have to unlearn everything.
Yeah, I get that. You know, I think that something that, like, when you go into AA and stuff, or if, you know, someone told you what you need to do to be sober, and the people, you know, get it the first time and everything, you know, they were given that knowledge, but like a lot of us have to, you know, go through it in different ways, and you know, experience that knowledge ourselves, to have the wisdom what we need to do to live a normal life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it takes some humility, and that's another thing that I was thinking about too, because I'm actually currently reading The Will to Power by Nietzsche, and he tears apart religion and morality completely. Yeah. He basically believes that like our human nature is the opposite of morality, and so we try to shove that down and act moral. Mm-hmm. And because we shove it down, it pops up everywhere, like where we can't stop going to war with each other and stuff like that. So he actually thinks that like morality is causing harm to the human race.
I mean, maybe there's like a truth to that, in thinking that like us as egos and desires, we are doing that, and most people are living, as for themselves and for what they want, their desires, their ego. It causes chaos,
That's a very Freudian view. You know what I mean? It's like what you repress bubbles to the surface as an unconscious wish, basically. So in other words, like you subconsciously want the exact opposite of what you have too much of. Right?
Yeah, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like an example of that could be like if you look at that book, 50 Shades of Grey, it's like this like billionaire dominant man that is like dominant in the bedroom, basically. And it's like that was like the best-selling book in America for however long, and it's like in the middle of the Me Too movement, where it's like they're condemning toxic masculinity. You know what I mean? It's just like, dude, it's a perfect example of what Freud was saying, especially considering it's like a sexual idea right there, but it can be applied to anything, and so but as far as what Nietzsche was saying, he thinks that that good and evil is just something we made up, and the only thing that matters is weak and strong, and so that's the whole idea of will to power. It's like we need to do things as the human race to like make ourselves stronger and better and all that stuff.
Sure.
But it's just like, to me, it doesn't make any sense.
I feel like that's true. It's just he forgot the aspect of what we need to do with that, which is make ourselves stronger and better with spirituality.
Yeah.
Which is, an aspect he didn't have. I read God is Dead.
Yeah.
I read some of that stuff, and it's like you said, he's very intelligent. He knows what he's talking about and stuff. Yeah. He's very cup is half empty and not half full.
Yeah, definitely pessimistic for sure. But my biggest critique is like, okay, if there's no good and evil, if there's no good and bad, then how do we distinguish what's strong and what's weak? Who's to say that weak isn't the good thing? And you know what I mean? Yeah. He's assuming that strength is good. Yeah. How can you do that without the concept of good and evil?
Yeah. My brain just says the answer is always love, right? Like love's the answer. Love's what's good.
Yeah.
But when it comes to, let's say, like a parent being tough love, right?
Yeah.
So that would be like another way to look at it. Like someone might think that's bad, right? Or not evil, but it's bad instead of good. So yeah. I think I do think love is the answer, but I do think that we don't always know what the best thing is for us, or like what is love.
Have you ever read any Emmett Fox?
I can't remember if I did.
He's like he was actually like around when like AA was first forming. Mm-hmm. He was like he called himself like a Christian Scientist. Okay. So he talked a lot about like metaphysical stuff and everything, and
the stuff that interests us.
No, he's definitely worth checking out. His famous book is Sermon on the Mount. But he talks about like the main aspects of God, right? And then he talks about how like there's sub aspects that are just like a combination of two or more of the main aspects or whatever. Not just for God, but just in general. And so like one of the ideas that he puts forth in one of the writings that I was reading was wisdom is knowledge and love and harmony. Mm-hmm. So in other words, like you can love somebody to death, right?
Yeah.
And in the pursuit of knowledge, you could do terrible, cruel things.
Yeah.
So wisdom is when those two things come together or in harmony, because it's like, you need to be able to counteract the extremes on either side with the other one.
Yeah, balance.
Balance.
I think that's a big thing. I think that the Temple of Delphi in Greece.
Yeah.
She was like the oracle,
mm-hmm.
and on the temple it says everything in balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Or no, everything. What did it say again? Everything in moderation.
Yeah.
So like balance is something.
Yeah, it was like the yin and the yang too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it comes up everywhere because we need balance. Otherwise, we just erupt into chaos until it kind of settles down into a new balance. And sometimes it's scary because that's kind of what it seems like is starting to happen in today's day and age. It's like we are sometimes it seems like we're on a seesaw, like it's completely unbalanced, and we're sometimes I feel unsure of where we're gonna land. I've been reading a lot of Dostoevsky too. I actually just finished one of his books, and what's kind of neat about reading Dostoevsky and Nietzsche at the same time is that they sort of they're both like epic fucking geniuses in my opinion, and they just duke it out, because they were both around at the basically the same time period, and they sort of answer the other one's propositions basically, and so
Dostoevsky's interesting. He's a really very he was Russian, right? That's Russian.
Yes, yeah. I mean, obviously Crime and Punishment is his most famous book, and I would say that that one's definitely worth reading. And it kind of tackles that existential situation of is there a meaning in life, or is there not?
I think we said this to each other on text messages. It's actually how we brought up this book and Logos was, you said, so the same humans, the same humankind send people to the gas chambers, death chambers, and those same humankind has a prayer on their lips when they go in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So these two different aspects of humans.
Yeah.
We have hope. That's what I think. We have hope.
Yep. That's and you need to if you're going to fully accept your humanity, you need to understand that both extremes are existing within you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you are the saint and you are the Nazi prison guard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You have the capacity to be both of those things. Mm-hmm. That's what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Which is, it's kind of it'll shake you to your core, I think, if you really think about it. That's a Jungian concept, is integrating the shadow.
Yeah. There's a really good message I got one time from someone. He said that in addiction, we have a demon in a cave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we either go in there and we fight the demon, fight,
mm-hmm.
or we run, run.
Yeah.
And when you find the balance of going into the cave, seeing the demon and bowing and acknowledging it, and then walking out, is when we're able to make peace with it.
Yeah, that's in so many stories.
Mm-hmm.
That whole concept. I don't know if you've ever seen Naruto. It's an anime.
Oh, I love
it's so famous.
Itachi.
Yeah, and that storyline is
mm-hmm.
it's exemplifies it perfectly. It's he's a orphan, right? Mm-hmm. He's at the bottom of the hierarchy, and his whole dream is to become the Hokage, which is at the top of the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. And how does he do it? He has to harness the power of the demon fox living inside of him, right?
Yeah.
It's that's the shadow. He needs to integrate the shadow, and by doing so, he can rise through the ranks and become, the dominant.
Or Bleach.
Yeah.
You don't know if you've seen Bleach, but
yes.
He's a hollow, a demon. He embraces
mm-hmm.
the demon or whatever to win battles for good.
Yeah, it's a common theme, And so that whole concept, it's we have a bad habit of not wanting to identify with the Nazi prison guard,
mm-hmm.
right? We would prefer to identify with the saint, or at the very least, we kind of want to walk in the middle, you know. But the problem with that is, it's like when you kind of cut off this whole section, this whole like negative aspect, you know, it's like you're basically saying like, I am not capable of being like that, you know. Well, it's like, if you're not capable of being like that, that doesn't mean that you are virtuous. That just means you're weak, you know. And so like when you fully integrate that into your personality, it's not that you can't be like that, it's that you can be like that, yet you're choosing not to be like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which is what kind of takes some virtue, if you will, you know. But I think it's important to, and the beauty of once again, I can't help it but to bring back to the 12 steps. It's like, this is a process that we do in the 12 steps. It's not like just like you get a sponsor and you read a book and then magically you have meaning in your life. It's like, no, we have to integrate that shadow. We do it by writing a 4th step and doing a 5th step, and then we also continue it in 6 and 7 when we take a look at our character defects. You know, that list that we write, you know, of all the harms and stuff that we've done, it's like, that's how we do it. You know what I mean? It's like we're taking a hard look at the stuff that most people don't want to look at. They would rather just be blissfully ignorant of it, you know, and think that they're just a good person at the end of the day. And it's like, well, I think fundamentally, like, even though we've done the bad stuff, we're still good people. We just did bad stuff, but it's like, we're never going to get past doing that bad stuff unless we become fully aware of it as a capability.
And we can grow from it, and we can be better, you know, we can be better than we would be even if we never did any of that stuff. We're able to, like, you know, rise above it and become better people than we, you know, would have been without all the troubles.
Absolutely. And nobody wants to hear a story about somebody who just always did the right thing. Like, nobody wants to hear that story because it's not relatable at all, and it's not really commendable at all. You know, like, if you look at like what kind of stories like capture us, you know what I mean? It's like the redemption stories. You know what I mean? The people that
rising from the ashes.
Exactly. Yeah. That's interesting because it's relatable. You know, and so and that's kind of that's what the stories you hear when you go to a meeting and you hear a speaker tell their story. You know, it's a story of redemption. And to tie it back into logos, right? It's like finding meaning in your suffering. You know?
That's what he says in the book. That's what he says, finding meaning in your suffering, you know, finding something to keep going.
And it's a 9th step promise in the big book, right? No matter how far down the scales we have gone, we will find that our experience can benefit other people. And that's like, it's almost like alchemy, you know what I mean? Where it's like you're transmuting this pain and suffering into something good. You know, one of the most powerful lessons that I ever learned was that when I suffer the most, I am most uniquely positioned to be of maximum service to other people. And it happened by accident. So I had been with this girl for about 10 months, and she relapsed and just disappeared. And I was heartbroken. And on top of that, a close friend of mine died like a few days later, and so I was really, really distraught. And to top it all off, this was my first bout of like longer term sobriety. I think at the time I was around a year sober when this happened, and it was my first time ever being sober that long. So it was the first time I had ever experienced grief in sobriety, you know, and so. It was like without a crutch, you know, I mean, I thought something was wrong with me. I lost like 10, 15 pounds. I wasn't eating. Like I was literally was affecting my physical health. That's how much grief I was in. And I remember being so desperate because I didn't know how I could possibly stay sober. I can remember crying because I wanted to drink, if that makes any sense. Like I needed relief so badly, but no matter how I tried to twist it, I could not make a drink or a drug sound like a good idea. But I had a solid, keep in mind, I had a solid program when this went down. Like I was prepared. Not that I was preparing, you know, consciously, but it was like I was making those spiritual investments. So when disaster struck, I had funds to withdraw.
Yeah, you built a strong foundation.
Yeah. And so I remember being so desperate, and I got on my knees and I prayed, and I said, God, I don't even know what I want. I don't know what to do. Just please, just whatever it is, help me, you know? And the strangest thing happened. Like, I would say within 48 hours of hitting my knees and saying that prayer, I went from having no sponsees to 5 sponsees, right? Part of the reason that happened was like maybe 6 to 8 hours later, after I hit my knees and prayed, my phone rang, and my sponsor at the time asked me if I would speak for his girlfriend at their home group. And so, you know, I was like basically bedridden and crying for most of the day, but I said, sure, I'll do it. Because I in that moment, I was like, this is God answering my prayer. So I showed up at the meeting, and I like got up in front of the meeting, and I poured my heart out, you know, and I was able to describe that like terrible feeling I had so well at the time. And that's part of the reason why I got so many sponsees, was from speaking. He came up to me afterwards and asked me, and working with those guys helped me get through that time. But not only that, after I got done pouring my heart out, you know, the meeting opened up for sharing, and the first person to raise her hand was this woman, and she like raised her hand and she was just crying. And I can't remember the exact words she said to me, but she basically just said like, I was gonna give up, but what you said touched me, and it gives me hope. And like I was like tearing up in front of the whole room, because it was like, it was like the first time I had ever experienced like finding meaning in my suffering. It was like I couldn't believe that had happened, you know. So it's definitely it's powerful when it happens. Not that it's fun when it's happening, because it's like you are still suffering, you know what I mean? But the minute that I found that meaning in that, you know, it was relieved significantly.
I had to find a meaning for death, you know, and I think that's one of the biggest things. People, you know, we're afraid to die, we're afraid to lose our loved ones, you know, and it makes everything, we feel meaningless in life, because we're going to die and we're going to lose our loved ones. And, you know, I think that like after like losing some people, I lost my mom and my sister and my girlfriend to overdoses. I like see that like it gave me an understanding and a perspective about God, about spirituality, about everything. It nailed down in my soul that like this wasn't it, that there was something after this, and that they're not gone forever. You know what I mean? And that made I look at life so much differently now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, yes, death is like, it's really sad, and like, you know, but it's inevitable. I don't think the people that we lose are gone forever, you know, and that's something that I wouldn't have, without the deaths, I wouldn't believe that. You know, I don't think that it would have mattered enough. Like, oh, I don't care if there's something after this, whatever. Like, you know, I'm sure at some point in my life I did think like that. I don't care what happens, you know. Like, none of this makes any. There's no purpose in any of this. It's all for nothing. But like, you know, when you know, in suffering and in pain, we have to reach out and, you know, ask ourselves what we believe in, and come, you know, find a meaning, find a reason in life. One of the
I think one of the discussions that I hear a lot is you know, if we were to leave religion behind, you know, there's a few things that religion has taken care of in the past that there's nothing out there at this point in time that could replace the shoes that it fills, you know. One being morality, right? Because there's never any agreement whether we can figure out what morality is rationally, using pure logic and reason, you know, because it kind of relies a lot on feelings, you know, because it's like when you do something wrong, you feel bad, you know.
And it's up to change, you know. The things that I thought were right were moral before, and are not what I think is moral now. So.
But that's just one aspect. So the other aspect is what you're talking about, the fear of death, you know what I mean? And it's like there's a whole, you know, philosophical, you know, terror management theory where they think the fundamental drive is the fear of death, you know. when you have a spiritual belief of some kind of afterlife, that helps you overcome that. And so those are two big things that spiritual belief is doing for humanity, that without it, we're kind of just lost when it comes to that stuff. But it oddly enough, when I first went through the steps and had the spiritual awakening and opened my mind to spiritual concepts, it evolves over time.
Yeah, I don't think it ever stops. I think it's always growing.
Yeah, it should not stop. That is for sure. But it took me a long time. I opened my mind to a lot of stuff before I ever even attempted to tackle afterlife, because that was just one thing. For a long time, even being sober and having a higher power, I still rejected it. You know what I mean? Because I was just to me that I felt like that was one of the places where religion went wrong, because whenever you're talking about an afterlife in a religious terminology, you're dealing with heaven and hell mostly. You know what I mean? And so I was never one to buy into that, right? Because it's the whole idea of do this or you're gonna go to hell. That I feel like that's done more harm than good.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I'd rather have love for God than fear for God. That's just me. And something that what I believed before. I mean, I look at everything like energy. When we die, sure, we have souls or spirits, but as far as I got before was our soul or spirits just leaves and we go light a light bulb somewhere in the universe, you know what I mean? Which is pretty still sad, not enough to find meaning. And then now I come to believe that we are conscious souls, conscious energy inside of a body, and that when this body's done, our consciousness, our soul leaves, and we're still alive. We're just not here anymore.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of not being tied to a certain ideology when it comes to spirituality, to have free reign to figure out what it means to you. That's really important, because as far as that more stereotypical religious view, I've always been on, my personal feeling has always been that heaven and hell are mind states here on earth.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because I've lived in hell for a long time, and I've also experienced fleeting moments of heaven. So to me that kind of deals with with life, but as far as what happens after we die, it took me a long time to finally hear something that resonated with me. And believe it or not, I was in the Hermetica, which is the teachings of ancient Egypt. And basically, I'm probably going to butcher this, but basically the way I interpreted it, at least, was that in the beginning, it was all human souls were just part of one giant collective soul. The one soul. They were all part of the oneness. And so when their idea of God, I think they called him Adam or Atom, something like that. When he made human beings, he took pieces of the one soul and manifested them into individual bodies.
Emanations. Different. I think that we are all part of God. If energy is one, right? This is where science can tie in all this. Everything is one, right? That's energy. Energy can't be created or destroyed, and it's all together. There's no space between you and me, right? But I think that we're all part of that one, experiencing itself in different consciousness, different perspectives. You know what I mean? Different views.
Well, so when their God first created humans and manifested the individual souls inside the bodies, in the beginning they were immortal, and so they were weeping and lamenting to God because they wanted to return to the oneness, because when they were one, it was perfect bliss and harmony and ecstasy and all that good stuff, and so their God loved his creation so much that he gifted them with death, so that they could eventually return to the oneness and be a part of everything. And so when I read that, I was just see, that is something that I can get behind.
I think that I think all religions are just branches of some of the studies that I've done and stuff like that would say one of the first civilizations with a religion or a philosophy like that was Atlantis, Atlanteans, which is where I think they say like Hermeticism came from to Egypt.
Yeah.
And like, so I think that, you know, all religions, like you said, they're a lot of them are like watered down now, but I think these are like core principles or core teachings that all like, you know, branched off and everything like that, and keep changing and changing. But you know, us being a part of God, you know, talk about it in Christianity, talk about it in Buddhism, and I think that reflects what you were saying about, you know, the one and splitting off from the one and everything. So
yeah, definitely really interesting stuff, you know. And even like the quantum mechanics and stuff like that are really interesting to me, with energy and everything, because like string theory, you know, basically says that like underneath it all is just like vibrating pure energy, you know.
I was reading something about that today about how, all right, so with string theory, is science proving, like, let's say dimensions, right? How first dimension just a point or line or whatever, and then second dimension and third dimension like depth, and then fourth dimension would be time. And I think that, you know, they say that like 10th or 11th dimension is what God is, where all possibilities, all everything, right?
Yeah.
And we're all working our way back up there. So I think that our souls and our spirits are, you know, evolving, trying to get back to the one. So I think that's interesting how string theory and stuff ties along to my beliefs about spirituality, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's so like, and Frankel talks about that too, about the dimensions, and it partly to explain why like meaning is so different to each individual, because it's like there's different dimensions of perception and stuff like that. But like he uses the example about the ape that's getting poked with a needle over and over again to like you know, get the serum out of them to make the polio vaccine or something. I'm not 100% sure on
I remember that,
yeah, but he's talking about like, so this ape is suffering because they're getting poked with needles over and over again. Do you think that they can understand why they're suffering?
Yeah.
And then like everybody was like, no, obviously not. Like you have to be a human to understand why this was happening. And so he used that as an example, and he said, well, if this ape is suffering but can't understand why, because a higher being is the one who understands, it's like, can't you, doesn't the same apply to us? Isn't there something higher that understands why we have to suffer?
Yeah, we can't see the big picture.
Exactly.
You know, I think that a lot. You know, I think that everything we go through and everything has a purpose. And you know, they say that, you know, like growing pains, we're all growing, and I think that our spirits, our souls are growing, you know, in this life, and it'll continue to grow.
Yeah.
You know, after this life. Yeah.
I've been working on a theory, but it's still got a long way to go. But you know, there's a theory out there. It's called Ampere's theory of circuitry or something along those lines. And basically, it's the phenomenon where like when there's an electrical current running through a wire, it creates a electromagnetic field around it. You know, and so like my thought process is that the energy that is in string theory and electrical energy are governed by the same principles. And so like the current of energy in the quantum field is generating a similar magnetic type of field. Not that it necessarily needs to be magnetic, but it's generating a similar field. And that is actually what gives matter its actual structure. You know what I mean? Because it's like on the atomic level, we're mostly empty space. You know what I mean? But obviously when we perceive it, it's
everything has that field too. You know, if you look at like chakra diagrams and like energy fields around like humans, you know, like that same field that would be around the planet, the electromagnetic planet. So, you know, I think that, like they say, as above, so below. I think that, you know, to the microcosm and the macrocosm, the same designs are being repeated. There's so much out there that is still yet to be like fully explained. It's so interesting. I can't wait for the future of all this. I really, like you were saying earlier, you want them to like combine everything. I want them to keep doing that, just keep getting closer with all the spirituality and the science.
There's like I don't know if you ever heard of the Schumann Residency. So the magnetic sphere of the Earth vibrates at 7.83 hertz, and it's named after the scientist who discovered it. So it's called the Schumann frequency. And so when NASA first sent astronauts out into space. It was the first time a human being was leaving the magnetic sphere of the Earth, and so for the first time they weren't exposed to that 7.83 hertz, and they started to get ill. Like they're cognitively, they couldn't function, and like so they had to put their best minds to work to figure out what the hell was happening to them up there. And finally, somebody figured out it's like, oh, it's because of this frequency. So so they had to invent something called the Schumann resonator, and the equipment
go up there with them.
Yeah, they put it on the spaceships, and it puts out that frequency, and it's like as soon as they're exposed to the frequency, bam, they work like their mind works fine. Which blows my mind. I heard a more religious, pastor type person, I think he had a PhD in theology, say something along the lines of like that Schumann residency is in the beginning God was the Word, and he spoke the universe into existence or whatever.
The vibration.
It's the vibration of his voice.
I like how Nicholas Tesla, he says that if you want to understand the universe, think of it in vibration, frequency, and yeah, I think that's interesting. I think that all of it starts making a lot more sense when I start thinking about everything like that.
Yep. Yeah. And even with like our mental energy, you know what I mean? I feel like it all applies. You know what I mean? I think it's all governed by the same principles, and I'm definitely going to continue to work on explaining that better and trying to formulate that over time.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's really interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, I mean, that was a great talk, man.
Yeah.
I definitely I got a lot out of this for sure. So
yeah, it's great. Being able to talk about the reason or the meaning that we get to find in the lives that we live now. We get to dive into all this because we experience spirituality in a way we didn't before.
Absolutely, and this is what it's all about. It's like coming together, talking about stuff like this, sharing it with the world, and hopefully somebody else out there listening gets a little something, maybe gets their mind working, And that's what I've noticed too. Like sometimes it's like I'll be reading something or listening to something that I don't even necessarily agree with, you know what I mean? But it just gets the brain working, you know what I mean? And then you just come to your own conclusions. And as long as you're thinking about this kind of stuff, you're on the right track, you know?
Can't go wrong with that. I agree.
All right, guys. Well, I'll see you guys next time. Until then, God bless.